Back now, Wednesday, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is expected to deliver what's being touted as one of the most important budgets yet. Investment experts say the speech needs to move beyond promises and provide practical solutions to the country's debt sustainability, as well as boosting growth through structural reforms. Nazmira Mula, head of SA Investments at 91, joins me now to unpack this. Nazmira, good to have you and good morning to you. Now, I just saw your article here titled, what it would take rather, or just, what will the 2021 budget hold rather. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But what I found interesting is that you say some facts here. I mean, just the past 12 months, we know some of the risks to the fiscus and what they've been. You mentioned them being, obviously the government wage bill and also capital requirements, to these badly managed SOEs we have in the country. Are we seeing the same trend as well this year, 12 months later?
I think what we're seeing is 12 months later, the SOEs remain a big drag on the fiscus. ESCOM remains an outstanding issue to be resolved. But also the government wage bill, the good news is the government has held the line on wage increases through last year. They went into the budget last year, they came out of the budget last year saying there was not going to be a wage increase, and they held that line through the year, which I think wasn't entirely expected, but I think COVID forced it. And then they won the case in the Labour Court in December when the unions took them to court to try and implement that third year of the previous wage agreement. And they said they couldn't afford it, and they actually won that case.
So then what should we expect from the 2021 budget speech? Which key areas should the Finance Minister prioritise?
Well, what we are seeing is that revenues are running slightly ahead of what was expected. And I'm not saying this is great news because COVID was expected to cause a further 300 billion rand shortfall in the budget deficit from February last year. So previously, February, we were expecting 400 billion rands had to be borrowed by the government from the 1st of April to the 31st of March 2021. And instead, COVID made the 700 billion. Now it looks like it was only 600 billion. So it's good news, but we need to put it in context of what it was. So what we want to see from the minister is they're not going to take this less bad revenue outcome and start trying to think of increasing expenditure, because we're still in a pretty bad place in terms of the borrowing requirement. We need them to control expenditure growth this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they manage to do this sustainably, how long do you think it would take for the country to not only sort of, survive the impact of COVID-19, but at least get back to where we were pre-COVID? Because I remember the minister saying even last year that COVID-19 has set us as a country back for so many years that it will still take amount of time to at least go back to where we were pre-COVID, and that wasn't necessarily the best space financially.
So I think controlling the borrowing costs is a necessary condition, but in order to get back to pre-COVID fairly quickly and surpass that, we need to have the growth reforms that the president talked about in the SONA actually being implemented. And that, I think, is the biggest area of frustration here. It's not just the fiscal issues, it's the growth concerns, and the growth is not about the finance minister. It's about the Minister of Minerals, Wedi Mantashe, accelerating the independent power purchase agreements. It's the telecommunications minister doing the spectrum sales. It's about the other things that just don't get done.
Just talking about debt management as well, which is, an issue for the country. And it seems that we have, debt that needs to be repaid back. Just according to your analysis, how long do you think it would take for not only the country to manage its debt, but to pay back the debt that we have as a country to our creditors?
Oh, I think it would take a very long time to start paying back all the debts. I think the question is, when do we get to a point where the debt to GDP ratio tops out? So where our economy is growing faster than our debt burden. And if we can control expenditure this year, if we can start to improve the growth outlook, then I think that point is within the next 2 to 3 years. If we do not control expenditure this year, that will not happen. And the problem with that is it means that as you start to raise more and more debt than you actually grow as an economy, the proportion of your expenditure that is going to make interest payments rises every year. You think of it as a household.
Yes.
You borrow more than your salary.
Right.
And you can do that for 1 year. And then the second year you're doing that, and what quickly starts happening is your interest payments you're making start to consume an enormous portion of your monthly salary, never mind the capital repayments that you're talking about.
All right, then, we'll leave it there. But thank you so much, Ms. Mira Mula, for joining us.